All right, you want to hear a story that's a true mystery? I mean a real one, where for decades, the facts just didn't add up. It's one of those cases that sticks with you because it's so strange. Let's talk about the Dyatlov Pass Incident. So, picture this. It's 1959, Soviet Russia. A group of 9 friends, all super experienced hikers in their early 20s, are on a serious expedition in the brutal Ural Mountains. These guys are tough. They're engineering students, they know survival, and they're aiming for the highest hiking certification in the country. Everything is going fine until the night of February 1st. They pitch their tent on a freezing, isolated mountainside. Their last diary entry, written that night, talks about how comfortable and warm they were inside their tent, despite the howling wind. Just hours later, that same tent was found sliced open, and a scene of utter chaos had unfolded. When a search party finally finds their camp weeks later, the scene is just bizarre. This is the first wow moment. The tent is sliced open from the inside. Think about that. Something inside that tent made them so desperate to get out, they took a knife to their only shelter. And here's the second part that makes no sense. All their stuff is still inside. Not just coats and boots, but their maps, their food, even a flask of medicinal alcohol. Everything was laid out as if they were just settling in for the night. Yet they chose to cut their way out. So, where did they go? The searchers followed their footprints. And this is where it gets even weirder. They hadn't run away in a wild panic. The tracks showed they walked calmly, single file, down the slope toward the woods a mile away. Some of them were barefoot in the snow. This wasn't a stampede. It's as if they made a collective, conscious decision to leave, even though it meant certain death without their gear. At the edge of the forest, they find the first 2 bodies. They're wearing only their underwear. They'd managed to start a small fire, a huge feat in those conditions. But the 2 bodies there were barely clothed, and they had frozen to death. The branches on the tree above them were broken high up, as if they'd been frantically climbing it. Were they trying to get a signal? To see if the threat at the tent was gone? Or were they trying to hide from something in the darkness? 3 more bodies were found trying to make their way back toward the tent. They didn't make it. But the real wow factor, the part of this story that has stumped everyone for over 60 years, is the discovery of the last 4 hikers. They were found months later, buried under 10 feet of snow in a ravine. And their injuries were unbelievable. The medical examiner at the time was on record saying the force was so great, no human could have inflicted it. He compared it to the force of a car crash. 1 man's skull was crushed, 2 others had their chests caved in. With so many broken ribs, it would have been impossible for them to breathe. But here's the detail that breaks your brain. They had almost no external injuries. Imagine breaking multiple ribs and crushing your skull without a single major cut or bruise on your skin. It's like they were hit by a massive shockwave or squeezed by an invisible giant. That specific combination, massive internal damage with minimal external signs, is one of the key reasons this mystery has lasted so long. Add to that the woman missing her tongue and the faint traces of radiation on their clothes, and you have a set of clues that seems to belong in a sci-fi movie, not a hiking accident report. You can see why this became such a legend. You have a collection of clues that seem to contradict each other at every turn. A calm escape after a panicked exit. Deadly injuries with no outward signs. Radiation. A missing tongue. It's the perfect storm of mystery. For years, people blamed everything from secret military weapons to Yetis to UFOs, because nothing else seemed to explain all these bizarre facts at once. But the most likely explanation is something that's both natural and, in its own way, even more terrifying. It's called a slab avalanche. Here's the simple version. When the hikers set up their tent, they dug into the snow on the slope. They didn't know it, but they had created a weak point. Later that night, a huge, heavy, compacted slab of snow broke loose and slid down right on top of them. And suddenly, the impossible clues start to make sense. The car crash injuries? That was the slab of snow. It hit them with incredible force, crushing their bodies against the hard ground and their gear. That's how you get those massive internal injuries without a lot of external cuts. The panicked escape? Imagine being in a tent when a ton of snow suddenly slams down on you. The entrance is blocked, you're being crushed, and you think the whole mountain is about to bury you. You'd cut your way out too. Leaving their gear behind, they weren't thinking about coats and boots. They were thinking, get away from the avalanche zone now. Their plan was probably to get to the safety of the trees and then circle back for their gear. But in that cold, they never stood a chance. The slab avalanche theory explains the main events: the injuries, the escape, the abandoned gear. The other weird details have simpler answers too. The missing tongue was likely due to scavenging animals and natural decay over the 2 months the body was in the ravine. And the radiation, it was very minor, and has been traced to 2 of the hikers who had previously worked in nuclear-related jobs. Their clothes were likely contaminated before the trip. What makes the Dyatlov Pass incident so captivating isn't that it's a monster story. It's that it's a real-life puzzle where every clue seems to point in a different, impossible direction. For so long, the mystery was the star, but now it seems science has finally caught up. The truth is a story of a perfect, tragic storm, where one small decision and a rare act of nature created a mystery for the ages. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most unbelievable stories have the most logical and deeply human explanation.